internet, this is a look inspired by Undersea gal from The Nightmare Before Christmas. I started off with a life cast, and this is plastilina clay. Job number 1 was to smooth out my face because obviously fish don't have like human-y shaped faces. I also used a spoolie to further smooth stuff out, and 91% alcohol as well on a brush. Make sure also you have some clay on top of the nose, because whenever we make the mold for this, you don't want just like your nose to be naked. It's going to be a lot harder for the prosthetic to hold on to you. It also increases the likelihood that the prosthetic will tear apart. Next, I kind of made these big old fat worms for the lips. I used a metal spatula and a small brush with 91% alcohol to kind of smooth those out and make them look how I wanted. You also notice that she kind of has like these lines in her lips, so I put in like these lines initially using a clay tool, and then I used a small brush with some alcohol on it to kind of smooth them out to make them look more natural. And then next I put kind of like these tiny worms of clay up against the bottom of the mouth, just so that when the prosthetic is actually made, like there's even more of an anchor for the lips to hold on to. We're going to be using gelatin for this, and gelatin can be pretty heavy, and if you have kind of weirdly shaped prosthetics, they're way more likely to fall off with the motion of your face. So that's why like I added some like additional like surface area on the prosthetic so it'll hold on a bit better. I also very lightly coated the entire sculpt with some Vaseline to make it easier for the clay to release from the mold. And then to actually make the mold, because we're broke artists over here, I'm using just a hot glue gun. It took about 10 glue sticks, just cover the entire thing. Once I let it set and it cooled, I used a metal spatula to remove it, and then I used a metal spatula, a washcloth, and a brush along with some alcohol to completely remove the clay. And since this is hot glue, like no matter what, there's going to be a lot of tiny like holes and ridges on the inside. So then we're going to coat the entire thing with Vaseline, and this is just Vaseline from the dollar store, and the Vaseline, you know, fills in all of the holes so that, you know, the end prosthetic actually looks how you want it to look, and on top of that it also serves as a mold release, and it'll make it a lot easier to pop out the gelatin. I'm doing a really basic homemade FX gelatin recipe, so it's just equal parts glycerin, unflavored gelatin powder, and water, and you throw those into a pot. If you're making a small amount, a lot of people put it into a microwave, but I'm making a decent amount, so I find it actually like cooks more evenly on a stovetop. To color it, I just used some really cheapo acrylic paints. So to start, I just put a little bit into the mold, and then you just kind of slosh it around to make sure it gets absolutely everywhere. I did this for a little bit so that we can get the gelatin to cool a little bit to make sure that it sticks to, you know, those sides a bit better. Once I was pretty sure that it was pretty nicely covered, I dumped the rest of the gelatin that I thought I was going to need, and then I pressed on my life cast. And expect a lot of spillage. I let it set in the freezer for half an hour. You could also let it set in your fridge like overnight or however long. The gelatin is a lot easier to remove when it's like kind of cold, because it's kind of stiff and it feels thicker. And it's less likely to tear if you actually let it get really cold before you remove it. I removed the excess, and the lips were definitely a little bit tricky, but you just kind of, you fiddle. I ended up kind of separating the top and the bottom lips as well. I was hoping for those to be attached to each other so it looked exactly like the sculpt, but that ended up not quite working out, but that's all right. For this, I used Graftobian Pro adhesive. Normally I'd want to use Prozaid because I feel like Prozaid and Prozaid cream are just like the absolute strongest for dealing with gelatin prosthetics. Most of what I make anymore is like, you know, kind of these bigger pieces made out of gelatin, and Prozaid seems to always have like the gripping power that I need. But Graftobian Pro adhesive works okay. I just had to use an excessive amount of it to get it to hold on to this piece. So I coated my entire face with a thick layer of it, and then I pressed the top portion of the prosthetic onto it. We did get a tiny bit of tearing where the nose meets the lips, but what you do is you get some Q-tips, and you basically use like the Q-tip cotton and some adhesive, and you like plug all those holes, and it just seals it right up. Go ahead and attach the bottom lip. And then I'm securing, since that bottom lip isn't attached like I wanted it to be, I'm just trying to like ultra secure that because it's just kind of like this awkwardly shaped, thick, you know, weirdly fitting gelatin piece. And I do not trust that to not fall off. So just globs and globs and globs of adhesive. And again, if I had Pros-Aid or Pros-Aid cream, I would not put remotely that much. And this is just a personal preference. I'm using the Maron setting powder to remove the stickiness. You didn't see it, but I actually also used adhesive around the edges of the entire thing to also help it blend in. So I just don't want to deal with the stickiness. I don't want to accidentally tear the prosthetic, which is why I coated it with the powder. So this is Tag face paint in white. And I just used like kind of a small cheapo brush to just like paint the lips white. And of course I had a reference image of Undersea Gal up this entire time. And then I mixed together, this is Maron Paradise paints, and I combined yellow and green. And then this is Maron Paradise paints in black to fill in the mouth. Then I took some brown eyeshadow on like a pretty thin brush, and I basically mapped out where the eyes were going to go. And I used my own eyebrows as a guide. And then this is yellow Paradise paints mixed in with a tiny bit of white Tag face paints. And I just went ahead and I filled that in. Your eyes will naturally get like really oily over time, so anytime you put like paint on your eyelid, whenever possible, try to set it with powder. I have the NYX Ultimate Brights palette, and I used the yellow from that to set it because I have very oily skin, and if you are like me and you have very oily skin, this is probably something you're also going to have to do. And then obviously do your other eye, and then fill in the remaining space with some more of that yellow-green mixture. And then I got a stipple sponge, and because, you know, you could definitely still see some of an edge, I like to add texture to kind of conceal the edges of prosthetics when it looks really bad. So I used yellow Paradise paints and black Paradise paints and green Paradise paints and just kind of like added some extra texture onto there. So it doesn't look quite as flat, and so that the edges of the prosthetic do look flat. So I also used clear nail polish to make the lips look shinier. I used black paint on a Q-tip to make the eyes. I used black eyeshadow to kind of add more of a gradient from the black abyss of the mouth onto the lips. And then this is the Kryolan 1 detail brush with black Maron Paradise paints for the eyelashes. And then I'm using a pretty flat eyeshadow brush and some light brown eyeshadow to do some shading around the eye. So again, those don't look as flat. Also, Undersea Gal kind of has this extra, like this nose layer, platform, lip type thing. So then I just took some black Paradise paints and I put that stripe down, as well as like her eyelid type things right there. Then I went back in with like that kind of thin eyeshadow brush and some brown eyeshadow, and I made like a bit of a shadow on the lower portion of that nose flap platform lip thing. And then some white paint that I tried to tap out with my fingers. Tag paints are waxed base, so to me anyway, they're a little bit harder to blend. So what I ended up doing was getting more of that yellow-green mixture, and I kind of tapped that around the edges of the white so that there was more of a gradient rather than this really weird, really harsh white line. And then since I needed something quick and lightweight, we're actually using Post-its. I'm using body paints on Post-it notes to make her fin type things on her head. So like for the cheeks, it was just one Post-it, and then you bend the end of it and you could apply adhesive to that. And then for the forehead, I actually took two Post-it notes, glue, like I posted them together and I painted on there, and then you can like bend the bottoms and make this really nice like little platform to to glue onto. So to deal with that forehead thing, you just put, your green and then your yellows, and then we add some stippling so that it looks like it's more part of the head. Stipple, 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 and that's it. This has been PTBarpun for HalloweenMakeup.com. Whatever day it is that you're seeing this, I hope you're having a good one, and I will see you the next time I do video stuff. Bye.